Exactly.
I don't think Jungle is that type of guy. Jungle nowadays he's more on the loud side.
By the way, I was not usually the loud guy. I don't think people really know this, but I was 100% the quiet guy. What's up, everybody? Today I've got a couple of the founders of one of the most successful backing groups there are. Like many of you probably think that backing is not really possible in poker, but apparently that's not true. This group has got more than 200 players who have succeeded as professional poker players and have won over $5 million since 2019 and are killing it in the game and have had over 100 players ascend from the micros. So they prove that it's possible. I want to like extend this thought process because it's actually the continuation of this thought process was how I got to this idea of like, why am I even optimizing for money? Why not optimize for experience and for positive impact, which is like quite closely related to money. And that's how I got to the idea of pursuing virtues, which was one thing I liked about your group, that you guys really have a lot of positive virtues that you maximize on. And I think that this is really the route to maximizing not only collective EV within the team, but also within the world, really. Was this just always existed from the beginning, or were there some kind of revelations where you guys realized, oh, let's actually make this into a team thing? Like, what's the story behind the the mission and the philosophy of the staking group?
I would say the way I see things nowadays, especially now with over 5 years of experience running this business, I see businesses, at least in these early phases, because even though we have been running for 5 years, we're still in an early phase. No company, can consider it as running for a long time with only 5 years. It's actually still a very early phase of development of a business. The business initially reflects the values of the founders, basically the people that are in charge of making that move forward. And I'm a father. I have 3 kids, and I view businesses as really, really analogous to building a family. Because when you start a business, it in a lot of ways it's very similar to having a child. So you're putting something out there into the world, that you have to basically raise, you have to teach how the word works, and you want to see it thrive, right? And you want to transmit your values to that child, and you need that child to interact with the world and grow. And since the beginning, we have always had these values. So in our website page, you can see honesty, ethics, professionalism, and excellence all being part of our values in the company. And I see this as reflecting the values of the founders, and this it has to be that way, just like a father teaches his values to their children. And since I started in poker, it was actually a significant issue to me, the the fact that poker in essence it's a zero sum game, right? So in order for you to win, someone has to lose, and that always kind of bothered me somehow. um, and maybe I still haven't figured out how to solve that issue within myself. But one way that we saw that would be possible to create some positive sum situation in the poker ecosystem is to allow our knowledge to allow other people to also thrive into that ecosystem. So I think that is really good in a lot of different ways, because not only we're creating a profitable business that helps people, have better lives than they would have otherwise, we're also having a business that allows us to create better lives for ourselves. So I think at least in our little ecosystem there, we are making something that is positive sum. So I think that's how we came up with that. So it's something that we still have to develop. We still need to keep this at the forefront of our minds going forward. But that's the, let's say, the picture of how it started and how we value this so much.
Yeah, and you can even say that I'm a product of that, because everything that I have today, everything that I've achieved, and uh, all my realizations and goals that I was able to achieve is because of this company. I was the first student. Now I was able to be a partner as well, and that changed my life. The poker, online poker, changed my life. I don't know where I would be today without online poker. So I want to do that for other people. As Saulo said, it's a zero sum game, but it doesn't need to be a zero sum impact to the world. You can still do good things with poker. You can still change lives and see someone that is a college kid without any much perspective because of the situation of that specific country, find a way to really make real money playing a game, and a game that really, it's very close to a sport, as you said, Jungle, that you need to cultivate some values to be able to succeed into this game. You need to be consistency. You need to be able to, like, get better every day, surpass yourself, compete with others. You need to have the discipline to put in the work to study and to play in a proper way. You need to be able to continue playing well even when things are going bad. It's kind of a school for life, in my opinion. And it's very heartwarming to be able to make to others what this beautiful game has made to my life, and to all of us here. Junko is a product of this game. Saulo is a product of this game. I'm a product of this game, and also it can have a very good impact, and it's very heartwarming to being able to see a guy like a 20-year-old who hasn't have so much perspective and was never very successful in anything in his life be a very successful person because of this opportunity.
Well, that's definitely a positive impact. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that you're talking about are absolutely a positive impact on the world, and my hope is that it will extend that way. In which case there might this will be something we'll have to talk about. In which case the world may return the favor and invest back into poker. But that's a bit more of a challenging notion. One thing I was reminded of actually from Saulo with his method of solving for GTO for poker is actually I was recently watching a video where people did this in respect to the like a continuous prisoner's dilemma, which is like similar to how life works out on a bit of a grand scale. Is they basically programmed a bunch of bots to use all sorts of different strategies with stealing and also with like very like duplicitous, like playing nice and then stealing later for bigger amounts and that kind of thing. And it turns out actually that according to game theory, the most profitable strategies were in fact to play nice when you just had a bunch of bots playing against each other for the most part. But to well, not I mean to play nice until people. Well, it's actually the most profitable strategy was tit for tat to be precise, which is you play nice unless people don't play nice back, in which case you do something back. It's like a bit of the short version of this, but game theory seems to suggest the nicer virtues or the more positive virtues. I mean, I guess it makes sense positive by definition to be the most profitable. In fact, and it makes sense to be cooperative because when you're cooperative, it creates more long-term value. I just think it's interesting that I like to reiterate the point that game theory coincides with ethics pretty well as with how poker works. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I think on that, I really like evolutionary biology and psychology. I'm not sure if it's a topic that you would like to if you like to study. And
that's a topic I like to study. The audience, we'll talk. We'll talk. We can talk about it a bit.
yeah, yeah.
The audience not always as much, but go ahead. Oops.
No, no, I know it's a dense topic, but it relates to what you're saying in a way that, well, our biology has been built through evolution to be very cooperative, and perhaps precisely in the way that you framed it. We play nice with each other until someone does not, and then we fight back, and then we have all these byproducts that are, for example, vengeance. There's all these theories about vengeance being just a product of evolution, because in a society where you're trying to cooperate, if someone decides not to cooperate, then if there's no payoff, then they're just going to steal all the resources, right? So being vengeful comes up as a way to promote cooperation. So I really like that topic, and it's nice that you brought it up. And I think it's we need to understand our biology, we need to understand our psychology, and we as humans, we like to be part of groups. I mean, that's a fact. Even though someone might be more introspective, like for example, you, I think you and I, Max, not so much, but you and I think we're more in the being introverted side. um, even people like us that maybe don't enjoy let's say social settings with a lot of people and all that stuff and having a gazillion amount of friends, we'll still like to be part of groups, we still like to connect socially to other people, and that's because of our evolutionary nature. And I think we need to understand that. So poker is really an activity that if you don't pay attention, you can find yourself grinding 8 9 hours in your bedroom and you don't leave your house, and the only people you talk to are your Discord friends that are also trying to make it in poker, which is something. But at some point it's still probably not going to be enough for you to feel like you belong somewhere and to release the positive chemicals that are necessary to keep our brain chemicals balanced. This team spirit that we like to build, there's also some deep evolutionary thing there, which is that we need to belong to something bigger than ourselves to feel like, or at least to have the positive feelings that are required to have a positive experience in life. So we try to leverage that as well, even in situations that sometimes other people from the outside may not perceive as a team. Like, what are you talking about? Poker is an individual activity that you just pursue. You sit at a table and you play. Like, what you're calling that a team? But we try to bring that perception and really actively help each other, because in that way we can make our profession an environment where we're promoting the very thing that we were built for, is to be in these groups and to be in tribes. For a lot of people that study evolutionary psychology and biology, all it goes back to, it's times where we belong to tribes. And I think there's a really important thing in there, which is that everyone needs to find their tribe, and we try to build our own. And we hope that by building this tribe, people that are with us in this journey, they can feel like they belong, and then the journey can be more positive. It can be at least a little bit smoother.
I agree with that. I mean, many dynamics can be created from the idea of a tribe or like a group that's sort of like an impromptu family, you could say. Uh, and there's lots of needs for it, especially in evolutionary biology, or according to evolutionary biology, like apparently the optimal amount of unit units to be in a group is 80, and it makes sense also for there to be a varying level of independence, but cohesion in order to optimize results. In fact, like the way the world is built actually has quite a bit of logic to it. To my surprise, I did. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but um, many things that people do are in fact optimal. Uh, Stepping away from this like kind of abstract argument, relating to poker, actually, what you're mentioning, this idea of teams could be a route towards. This is one of the biggest things to a route towards spectator sports, which is really a barrier that needs that poker needs to transcend. And it's like well, it's quite natural that what you mentioned is that people want to be part of teams. So what you guys are doing as cultivating a team could in fact lead towards something that could be a part of poker boom. In addition, because you guys have so many players and because you guys are making such a positive difference in the culture, like this could be something that's good politically for poker, to represent humility, integrity, and these kinds of things. On top of that, you guys, in my opinion, can potentially have like an impact in making a difference with this aspect of vengeance towards people who act as thieves towards the poker community. Like you guys can, if you guys make a statement to your group about someone who steals or whatever it is, like this can go pretty decent way in the poker world in general.
I found out that here in Brazil we have a much more closer poker community than I think anywhere else. I think there's because there's a lot of poker teams here. We are a cash game team. There are very few of them, but there are a lot of MTTs team, and all the owners talk with each other. So when a player is a scammer, when a player likes to collude, when a player is not a good person to the game, everyone kind of knows. So that player won't be able to get into any stable, any stake, any team, or anything like that. So that's another aspect of the community helping the ecosystem of like this player that he likes to steal and he likes to collude. He won't have anywhere to learn. He won't have a team for him to participate because all the owners talk with each other and everyone knows who are the rotten fruits, as you can say, So if a player like made something bad for us, steal from us or whatever, he will never be able to get into any other team in Brazil who we have access to, who are pretty much all of them. So that's another, as you said, very good impact to the community overall, by this business model.
I'm glad to hear it. I mean, I think that as a side note, I think that if these scammers or whatever make reparations, it might make sense to let them participate, but it would have to be like quite like big
Yeah,
reparations, like not
that
cheap.
usually doesn't happen.
Um, yeah, I know it's really rare. Um, but yeah, more behaviors like that are good because I think if that's the case, it makes the penalty of stealing from the communities like so steep that it stops people from doing it. Like that's the idea. Like it can be the case that it just sucks too much to do it, and this puts an end to these kinds of problems.
Right.
I want to go back to this idea of this makeup problem because this seems to be a big issue in general with staking. I know actually that Sauce Ben Solsky did some staking, and he had this idea of makeupless stakes based off of math somehow, but it failed, and he didn't really understand why. He had this idea of, well, maybe just people don't care when it's not their money. Have you guys toyed with any of these ideas?
Nothing in particular. I mean, as I said, we didn't still crack this code, so to speak. But relating to what you said, I think there's two different profiles of people. There's the people that find playing with someone else's money a super big pressure to the point they're like, maybe I don't want to do that, because it's too much responsibility. And then there's another group, the other side of the spectrum, where that relaxes them maybe a bit too much to the point where they play higher than they should, playing lineups that they shouldn't, because they are not perceiving that as a substantial amount of risk. So that's maybe the reason why it's so tough because, the idea would be something in the middle, but we have either people that find it too much responsibility, too much pressure, people that relax too much and then end
Yeah.
up being a little bit too reckless.
They end up like getting in much higher makeup than they would if they were playing with their own money. That other end of the spectrum, and this first end of the spectrum, it's not very common for us to have the first end in which he's very scared to play with others' money because he won't be trying to join a stable, probably, and he will try to
Mhm.
look for a CFP. We started doing CFP, but it's not a long time. But yeah, what usually happens is that players they end up like getting into bigger downswings that they would with their own money because they failed to move up to move down early. They ended up just moving down after they lost like a bunch of binds, and they wouldn't otherwise if there was their own money. Not
Oh,
everyone, but
really?
there's a good part of players that happened there.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. It seems like both people are in some kind of side of the spectrum. I would have thought that you prefer the people that are extra cautious.
Yeah.
I'd rather have those than
Yeah.
the ones that don't give a shit.
Europeans they seem to be more cautious than Brazilians. That's something that me and Saulo were even talking about. I think in one of our last meetings that usually Europeans they want to play with their own money. They really don't want to get staked, while Brazilians they
Hmm.
only want to get staked and they don't want to play with their own money. That's cultural, of course. Culture on the poker community is very common for Brazilians to get staked and to not have a CFP deal. But we definitely notice that difference. And Europeans, they are usually more fight. They have a bigger financial plan. You know, they have more money saved up for the bad times, while Brazilians, they usually don't have that that plan, you know, of saving a lot of money for when the money doesn't come in, you still can pay your bills, and they end up getting into more trouble. And it's just because of the system, the way that the education works in Brazil, and probably the way that education works in other more developed countries. You know, like probably Europeans, for not all Europeans, of course, but the Europeans from the most developed countries, they get taught on how to work with money, how to save up money, how to value money. And here in Brazil, there's nothing about that in schools, so you just left on your own. You know.
Yeah, I think it's also about just that thing we were talking about in the beginning, where for an European for it to make sense for you to be a poker player in Germany, for example. I actually not too long ago I looked up what was the minimum wage in Germany. I think it was like 1,500 euros a month. Like 1,500 euros a month, that's like top 5% income in Brazil. So it's like,
Oh, wow.
so it doesn't make sense. So someone that searches for staking or some kind of CFP agreement and being a European, it's very likely that the person already has a bankroll because they play mid stakes. It wouldn't make sense for them to
Yeah.
play low
Hmm.
stakes because they could find a minimum wage job that would pay similar amounts. Whereas a Brazilian, if they had a lot of money saved up to the point that they would have a bankroll, they'd probably make a lot of money somewhere else, and they wouldn't look for poker as an opportunity. So there's a big discrepancy in the groups of people that search for poker or that are searching at least for these kinds of deals with us. So the typical grinder that we take, being European or even from the US, typically someone that already has a bankroll. Maybe he has plays 200 now, 100 now. He has $10,000 of bankroll. A Brazilian very rarely is going to have that because if he had that sum of money, uh, he has a very nice paying job and he's probably not going to
Oh,
be
really?
looking for poker.
Yeah,
So there's a
and
big difference there.
just to contextualize a little bit, the minimum wager here in Brazil is something like $300. So you can
Whoa.
make more than minimum wage by being a 3BB winner at NL25. You know, so and I bet that there are much worse countries than Brazil in that. But yeah, while in Germany the minimum wage is like 1.5 euros, here is like $300. So
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I would
really?
imagine a lot of your audience is from the US and English speaking countries like US, Canada,
Yeah.
UK. Like life in developing countries is really, really different. Like I had a friend when I was coming up in poker. This was 2016, 2017. He was from Venezuela and
Oh,
he
shit.
was a
Venezuela's
full-time
running exactly
professional.
problems.
He played 5NL for a living. Like I'm not kidding. He played 5NL for a living, and he had like
Oh, shit.
millions of hands at micro stakes because playing 5NL was more profitable than going find a job, at his country.
That's
So
crazy.
it's crazy. It's insane.
But that's like kind of a good
So,
thing for poker because now like that means poker can be profitable for people in Venezuela. Venezuela's got issues, like
yeah,
issues.
absolutely,
Like
absolutely.
it's I mean I don't even know too much in detail, but there's like it's run by the mafia
No,
and
yeah,
whatnot.
it's bad. It's bad. We have a lot
Um
of Venezuelan immigrants here in Brazil. It's bad.
so going one thing that I would find really interesting would be how the personality traits differ based on the I mean it's also kind of a controversial subject to be honest, but I don't mind some controversy. The personality traits differ over different demographics, um, because that's kind of what you guys were alluding at between like the Brazilians and the Europeans. Relating that back to evolutionary biology, one thing I recall reading about this is that because of the seasons in the European countries, like alternating between like winter and summer or whatever, it cultivated more of the more tendency towards planning traits for these sorts of countries. Whereas other countries where it's temperate or whatever, like there's good time to grow crops or whatever it was year round, or where you didn't really have to plan, and
Hmm.
people didn't necessarily do that as much. Um, and so that apparently led to quite a bit of the genetic diversity that happens today. But I don't know how much of that relates to poker. One interesting study would be to look at other countries that have a average salary of $300 roughly compared to Brazil. I actually think there are some European countries to look at that are in that vicinity, more of like the second world ones.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. If I don't want to mention countries just in case I get some political backlash, but
Yeah.
just a thought to consider. Um, you might be able to. I'm just curious about this kind of stuff of like the tendencies of the tendencies of different demographics across different boards, uh, and a bit too who's actually good at poker and who's not. I would think
Yeah.
must be
No, I
some
find that
data there.
topic personally fascinating, not just in terms of poker, but the whole field of psychometrics. So that's the field in psychology that tries to really measure, with numbers, psychological traits and how that relates to certain performances in all different areas of life. And we do a little bit of that in metagame because, as Max said, our selection process has, I would call it a psychological evaluation. So it's basically a 100 question test that aims to measure certain personality traits. So we have personality traits like self confidence and extroversion, tendency to conflict. There is I can't translate it to English very quickly, but it's I think it's 10 different personality traits that get measured by this psychological evaluation. And one project that we're currently doing right now is we're trying to find correlations between these personality traits and profitability in poker. So actual win rate at the
Hmm.
tables, so we can find what would be the, let's say, the optimal profile for being a poker player in terms
I
of
was just
personality
thinking that.
traits. Yeah.
I
So
was just
if we
thinking
can
like
find that, that would be amazing.
so. Like, do you have any insight into what is the optimal personality traits or personality percentages of extroversion or whatever it is for poker? Have you
So
provide
far, not
think
yet, not yet, because in these last years we need to build a database, right? So everyone that goes through a selection process has to take the psychological test. So far, I think our psychologist, because he works with other people as well, he has maybe 500 to 600 tests done. So the work currently is to make the crossing between the psychological traits to actual poker profitability, results, winnings, etc., and then see if there are correlations in the data or not. It could be that there are no correlations, and many different personality traits can lead to being a very good poker player. I would imagine though that there are some correlations in there. Um, One thing that we get into the test, for example, is it's called capacity for capacity for realization. I'm not sure how to properly translate it to English. I'm gonna say it in Portuguese. You guys maybe can look up. It's called capacidade de realização. Basically, it tries to measure capacity to take on challenges and act upon them. You know, and
hmm,
then of course, if the test says that you have a higher capacity to take on challenges and execute on them, then very likely you're going to perform better than someone who has a lower capacity. If someone that maybe paralyzes in the face of challenges, someone that maybe hesitates, etc., etc. Because being a professional poker player is all about, pushing forward even when the game punches you in the face. So I think there are some things that are important, but only the data will be able to show us, and we still don't have that answer. I hope that we find something, because then our selection process can be even more effective. Then we can just compare the evaluation from a certain player to the database, and we see what's the probability of success for that profile. Of course, that's not never going to be perfect. There's always going to be some randomness into that, but since we are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into the business, we might as well just select the proper people, or at least the people that have the highest chance of success. That's something that we might get to in the future.
cool. I think there's probably some potential there, and this is an area that would really interest me. It also helps to it also helps to partition people into fields that they'd actually be successful in, not just for poker. My interest is beyond poker with this, and the first
Hmm.
thoughts that come to me is I'd like to take a look at this test myself. I could take it, and I think
Nice.
it would be good to give it to some of the top poker players also and see what comes up. I have some ideas of what would be useful traits for success in poker specifically, but I'd be interested also to see how they might differ for other fields. And with like accurate readings, I would think that you can tell people that they're just not good candidates
Hmm.
for poker, and this solves quite a few problems, I would think.
I
Um,
agree.
so I
It
think we
can
should
be a
try
little
it.
controversial, though, as you said in the beginning, because maybe the guy is really hopeful that he wants to make as a poker player, and then there's a test saying that it doesn't fit the profile, and then that's not very politically correct, let's say, and it can cause all sorts of
Oh yeah,
repercussions. But I
Yeah,
would say there is something to be said about not everyone can be a basketball player, not everyone can be, let's say, a nurse. There are traits that are required for specific professions. So I think it's something that can give good insights.
for sure. And also
well,
there are a lot of variables as well. Like you have the test in which you measure the psychological traits of that person, but you don't know other the situation that that person is in his life. Is does he have a stable life? Does he have a girlfriend, a wife? Does he has friends or not? So it's kind of hard, man, to try to find anything like that. And maybe some player that has a lot of good traits, because he doesn't have this, there's no chance to him. But some player that might not have the good traits, I think it's very hard for someone that, if he is in a very good situation, to not make it at least on low stakes. I really do think that low stakes, if you're not a low IQ type of person, if you are like within the average, I think that low stakes, almost everyone can beat it with proper instruction and proper effort.
hmm.
But for sure, I think to get to the high stakes and to the top of the market, you need some traits for sure.
Yeah, and it's
Oh
also
yeah.
not just about probability of success. It's also about how is that person going to feel fulfilled with that profession, because it could be that someone that doesn't have, let's say, the best profile for poker could find success in it, could be profitable, but then their experience as a professional poker player is not going to be something very positive for them as a person, because that profession doesn't necessarily meet their personality traits. One thing that I've seen over the years that is not necessarily super accurate, but poker does seem to draw a little bit more of the introverted people that feel okay with being computer for long hours and interacting with the solver instead of other humans, and that's fine for them. It doesn't make them feel, at least to a certain degree, it doesn't make them feel like they're missing on something or that they should be doing something else. Whereas for an extroverted person, it might be that the experience of grinding solver grids is not very pleasurable, is not very fun. And there's this funny story, I guess, I'm not sure if it's true or not, that people talk about Linus, that at some point he was in a party with some friends, some of his poker friends, and then it was like late at night, and people were like, "Where's Linus? Where's Linus? Where's Linus? Did he go home?" And he allegedly he went home to run some Sims. So that's anecdotal, but it's like it's kind of the profile that poker draws, like that person who he's okay being by themselves and enjoying their own company while grinding a solver. So it's not just about the probability of success, but also, I mean, are you going to feel fulfilled in that career path? Is that something that in 2, 3, 5 years you're going to look back and say you made a good decision in pursuing? Or maybe if the evidence is so high, maybe you should just pursue something that is more in line with your characteristics as a human being. I think that's also important.
That I think is a really complicated question to answer. And I think you're right. I do think that is very valuable. The thing about that is that, well, one thing to factor into that is what about if you use poker as like a means to an end, or use something as like a means to an end. If you see what I'm saying, like it might be the most beneficial route to do something you don't love, and get to a place where now it makes sense to do something else. And by the way, this reminds me, like we talked about this idea that poker is not at least not by itself within a box, not a greater than zero sum game. But I would like to challenge that view, and this is kind of what reignited my interest in it. But in many aspects, it can be. And so, what I personally am looking for is to find people that are more self actualized towards like taking the entrepreneurial route, and not just like um, I mean, you guys already have actually. You guys are examples of that. You basically made a staking company. It's essentially a version of that, but basically doing something more in the route towards building something that has an impact in the real world. And like my personal idea was to take people that are quite successful at poker. They don't have to be extraordinarily successful, but then go on and use the money for something else. You can create a cascading sequence of events that creates like a parabolic uh, route towards positive impact.
Yeah, we'll only find out if we keep digging, right? If we keep building models and trying to find answers. I think human beings are very driven by questions and trying to find answers, and certainly something I'm driven by. And it's something that I think has become more and more and more and more. I don't even want to say important, because I guess you could say it has always been important to be happy, but it has become more, let's say, significant in people's lives, because at least in first world countries, but nowadays even in third world countries, survival is guaranteed for a large part of the population. So it means
Hmm.
that you don't need to, like, your life, you can see it as something that you're guaranteed to live for long periods of time, even if you don't necessarily succeed all that much in your professional life, which means that this frees up space, for considerations of philosophical level and psychological level and all that stuff. So it
Yeah.
seems to me that the future generations will be thinking, I guess that's already true. Like, if you ask teenagers if they prefer to make more money or be happier, I would guess, I don't know, I haven't seen the data, but I would guess they would answer that they would prefer to feel more fulfilled, or they would prefer to be more engaged with their work and all of that. So it seems to me that this is a very significant issue of the future generations, where technology is going to have evolved so much to the point that for a large part of the world, survival is guaranteed. And now we're turning ourselves to some problems of higher degree.
Yeah, when you don't have to work all day to survive and to just go on to the next day, you free some more space so you can find other questions for you to be. Yeah,
Basically.
when
Figure out all these like really advanced problems.
yeah,
Well, we'll see the data for that one. I want to see how that turns out. That sounds like, how do you even assess the data? I'm curious to see it.
nice.
So
I'll
we're
keep in touch
running a
with
bit
you.
out of time here. I have one other thing I wanted to mention on the topic of moving up. I know that from entrepreneurship, you're supposed to make a decision relatively fast with the information, and the amount of information that you need apparently for an entrepreneurship is about 60% to make a decision. Because it turns out what happens is you make a decision, and then you discover, oh, it was wrong, and then you pivot, and then you make another decision. This is a superior model than waiting till you have the 80+% or whatever it is, and then making a decision and then pivoting. Because I guess you just pivot much faster. Um, I'm curious if that is also found in poker. I would imagine that it is, just because I mean, I know that no one really follows Kelly criterion, but maybe it's possible at lower stakes, especially with like a stake and you are guaranteed safety. That seems like something that would be really interesting. But psychologically, it's very difficult to deal with Kelly criterion type moving up and moving down type situations. But because of the liquidity, in lower stakes, it might be possible to have this kind of feedback loop for moving up and moving down. Is that something you've played with?
I don't think so. I don't think so. We haven't played with it and try to look, but yeah, for sure. I think we can be more certain when it's worth it to move up, when it's worth it to stay on the same stake, and also based on profiles as well. You can see, like, I don't know if that's exactly what you asked, but there are a lot of players that they are fine with staying at, for example, 100 and that's their goal as a poker players for their lives, because they came to the conclusion that with that amount of money for X period of years, they are fulfilled and they have everything that they need, and they don't need the stress to try to move up to higher stakes. To like, they are almost 90% sure that they can make it on 100 and as you said, like 60%, maybe they are 40% sure that can make on 500 and it's better for them overall to just stay at this that stake and and keep keep grinding on that stake and making a living on that stake, you know. So yeah,
Okay.
there are definitely some players that they left our stake, they left our team because they said, "Hey guys, I'm already at a level that I want to be. I don't really want to move up anymore. I just want to make more money on here on 200 so I can invest on this other business." And I think that's completely fine. And for sure, there are some players that think like that. We have other players that they are the other way around. They say, "Man, I want to be playing nosebleeds and I want to get to the high end of the poker world, and we are here for them." But there are some players that after like 2 3 years 4 years maybe with us, they say, "Hey, I think that's it for me. I got to where I want to be, so now I just play on my own and keep playing the stake. That's enough for me, and that's all right. That's good. We're happy that we're able to take a player to that level in which he is fulfilled with what he has achieved."
All right. Well, those people sound a lot simpler to deal with. So there's that. Maybe that's even a better situation, I guess, for the backers. It's like, oh, this
Yeah,
guy's playing 50 cent a dollar. All right, bye.
Yeah, it doesn't create that many problems.
yeah, but
I guess you want those
it's hard.
guys.
It's harder to maintain those guys in the team, right? Because after a few years, you
Really?
already built your role. You already like, yeah. Because the biggest restraint for them while they are in the team, of course, they need to get to a certain strategic development. But after they are already there, like they know that if they don't really study a lot for like 2 or 3 years, they are still beating the games and they already have a role. So it's kind of harder to maintain those players because they already have everything that they need to be at that place
Hmm.
that they want to be. Maybe in a few years they might come back and say, "Hey man, I think I need some update on my strategies." And all right, we are here for you. As you said, this is a very simple player to deal with because it's much easier to make a deal. It's much easier because he knows what he wants. But yeah, but it's kind of hard to maintain a player like that after like 3 years with us. Like he already have a role, he already has a role, he already has everything to stay on that stake. And maybe he'll come back in a few years, but he'll be on a few years on his own for sure.
All right. All right. Fair enough. Um, one last question. Are you guys not
All right.
worried about competition when it comes to staking or anything like that? Or giving away information on the stake?
We have competition. There are some other players there in the market. But for me personally, I've never been worried about competition from a perspective that if I spend even a little bit of my time thinking about my competitors, that's time I could be using to make my performance better, my product better, my service better. So I think as an entrepreneur, of course, you need to understand how your market operates. You know, what are the gaps that maybe your competitors are not feeling, and what are the opportunities there. But it is my belief that the more time you invest into your own product and your own service, the better. You know, and if you can make your product, your service the best there is, then there's no room for you don't have to worry about the competition. So I think the philosophy, and that's something personal for everyone, but for me personally, if I want to be in a business, I want to be the best one in that business. I want to really provide the best experience, the best product, the best service that people can find. And if I can do that, then it's my competitors that are going to have to worry about me and not the other way around. So that's what I try to do. That's what we try to do with metagame staking. That's what I do with YouTube personally. That's what Max does with his YouTube channel as well. And I think if one can stay consistent with that, with the mindset, then the competitors that are going to have a problem.
Yeah, pretty much it. Like focus on your own. Just do your best, put all your effort there, and if you are committed to being the best, like let the competitors worry about you, not you worry about them. Of course, we always keep an eye on the market for, let's see, if someone is offering like a huge better deal than us, there's probably something there, like because we see that how the math works, and there's no way that you can go against math. But we try to not spend too much time about it, thinking about it, and just try to do the best, just try to provide our players with the best. Because if they come up to the conclusion that if I want to be the best player that I can be, metagame is the place that I need to be, that's our goal. That's what we want to achieve here.
My hope is that you guys and everyone else contributes to growing the game, especially as a whatever you want to call it, like a sport, like something like chess. And um, on that note, I hope that we can attract more of the entertainment crowd towards the game that likes to gamble on it for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's another
It's
focus.
hard to find a balance there by promoting as a sport, but also promoting in a way that gamblers want to play it, so the game is still alive. That's the trick, I'd say.
I was going to say that you touched on a very important topic that I think we're moving towards it. I think as an industry, but needs to be pursued more, in my opinion, which is making poker entertaining. And well, you participated on the Game of Gold, and you were active in making that work. And I saw that people loved your participation in the show. You made it better, and I think that's what we need to go for, making poker entertaining, so that more people come to it, more people become interested in it. And I don't see all that much effort being put into it. I know that GG Poker did that with the Game of Gold, and apparently was a success, and they're probably going to do it for another season. But I think that as a whole, this needs to be pursued more often. There are the live streams that do that as well, but I think that's the direction to go. Making poker as entertaining as possible, so that more people become interested, and that way the industry grows. More people are playing, more people are engaged, and the overall economy of the game grows.
I will assist in finding ways of doing this more in the future. Although it helps if people are
Yeah.
willing to get theatrical with it, but we'll see about that. I
yeah.
mean, I don't expect it.
Yeah, we miss
Dress up
we
in
miss some
costume
of
a
the
little bit.
characters from the that they used to have more characters back in the day. I think there's not only that they used to have more characters back in the day, but they used to promote it better. Like you have a lot of different characters on high stakes poker, and everyone has a specific personality trait, and it made more interesting to watch. But lots of money was put into making them look like that as well. So, but yeah, I think that's very important to poker,
Okay,
making
well,
people entertained.
maybe you can find some entertainers and teach them how to be YouTube stars or something like that. I think that's definitely a thing. I would
Yeah,
think. I don't
Absolutely.
know how to do that, but that's I'll see if I can work that angle myself, but it'll be a minute. Anyway, any aspiring YouTube stars out there will have to recruit you for poker somehow. You need your
yeah,
YouTube resumes and content creation. Definitely, there's more need for entertainers in poker. So
for sure.
whoever's maybe like get them to whip out all the chip tricks or something. I don't know.
But it's kind of hard.
Anyway,
It's kind of hard because we were talking about personality traits, and I think we ended up coming to the conclusion that one of the personality traits that is necessary to be successful in poker is to kind of not be that super extravagant and loud person. You know, to be very successful, and the game is harder than it was before. You need to be a more, not need to be, but it's usually more common to be a more quiet, analytic person, and that doesn't make good entertainment, to be honest. So
Yeah, but
that that
there's
comes with the
90
nature of
people
the
at the
game.
table, right? You
Yeah.
need you need. Let me try to find someone with the traits you have mentioned. I don't know. You need an Instagram influencer. You need an actor, a Hollywood actor, an actress, and you need the Linus Love, the Jungleman. You need the Phil Galfons. You gotta have this mixed lineup. You can't be just everyone is no focused on entertainment, then no one focused on the strategy part because they
Nah,
have to
but
be
yeah,
the
they they
inspiration.
they used to have that back in the day with Tom Dwan. Tom Dwan was like the quiet guy.
Exactly.
I don't think Jungle is that type of guy. Jungle nowadays he's more on the loud side, and
Yeah,
as you
yeah.
Uh,
could see on the Game of
I
Gold.
don't. I By the way, I was not usually the loud guy. I don't think people really know this, but I was 100% the quiet guy for
Yes,
quite some
yes, I
time.
can see that. Yeah.
Um, it's a bit of serendipity that changed me, but also a couple things. We'll talk about this briefly right before I go. Improv was probably one of the best investments that I've done. I really should
Yes.
do that more. Um, there's also such a thing as it's actually very cheap, by the way. Improv is quite cheap. I don't know if I can focus on it right now. I barely have any time, but I kind of do it when I play at the poker table anyway. Um, Another thing, there is such a thing as a storytelling coaching. This helped a bit. I should do more of this myself, but that's another thing to add towards this. One thing was that I wanted to meet girls, and you have to find some way to talk doing this. So it's kind of like working on
Yeah.
being improvisational and that kind of thing because you have to say something, which is so hard to like.
Right.
All right.
They're like focused to
You
say
can't
anything,
just
and
show
that's
them your graph, right? Gotta say
no,
something.
that's really funny. That's really funny.
That's
Uh,
yeah.
Actually, one
For sure.
exercise,
Yeah,
huh?
for sure. Being the loud player at the table was not the biggest incentive for Jungleman to get those improv classes. I think there was something prior to that.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
let's just say this: the bar is really low. I wouldn't call myself really like wild extrovert, although I do like being the center of attention. That's the good news is you don't need to be that loud really to stand out and be
Yeah,
someone to bring some value to the poker room. So all extroverts out there and social butterflies or whatever it is, the poker we've got a spot for you. Um, Especially if you
for
can like
sure.
make entertaining content. Anyway, all right, thank you guys, and maybe you guys can bring like some entertainment coaches in there. Uh, that's not a
Yeah,
bad idea.
maybe.
Maybe I'll try it myself. It's not if I can find them.
Yeah.
Any last words for you guys? For any more things you want to mention about metagame or anything else before we get out of here?
Uh, no, I would say just like to thank you for inviting us and finding this time to give us this opportunity to exchange these ideas. Really appreciate. It's always nice and fun to talk about poker and all the ways we can make it better. So I really appreciate it, and I wish all the success going forward with your future guests and your channel, everything you do. I think you're a great character for the poker community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jungle. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you for the invitation. We have a YouTube video that we have recorded for my channel. It's already been edited, so it will be out there soon. And it will be in English, so maybe your audience can watch that one. That will be, I think, one of the few English videos that I'll have there. But yeah, thanks, man. I hope that we can keep in touch. If you are in Vegas, I'm coming down to Vegas later this month, so we can meet there maybe. But thank you for the invitation here. It's been very nice talking to you.
Yeah, you guys too. Thank you guys for your time, and really appreciate what you guys do in poker.